Welcome to the Greenleaf podcast. Today we are in McDonough, Georgia. I have myself, we got Andrew, Josh, and today we are very excited to have Mayor Vincent with us here today. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
We're excited about this. Is a pretty cool room that we're in. We're normally kind of like just figuring it out, but this is a pretty cool room. So we're in the city council basically.
Yeah, this is where we have our city council meetings. This is where the magic happens.
We're surrounded by the previous 9 mayors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a duplicate for one, so the previous 10.
Got it.
Yeah, the first mayor over there, but I'm assuming there was something before. It was 1896. So there's a picture of somebody from 1896 on the wall, which is
Incredible.
that's an old picture.
It's an old picture, right?
So McDonough was founded in 1823
Yeah.
as a city. So historically, the city is very old. Some of the mayors we've talked to, it's been 9 years, 11 years. They're on mayor 1 or 2, but that's quite a history, 200 years.
Yeah, I think one thing I can tell that other mayors can't is our birthday is December 17th, and so is mine.
That's pretty.
Wow.
That's
The 202, it's 202 years old.
Yes, we celebrated our 200th anniversary 2 years ago with a hot chocolate social, which was absolutely magical.
And, as we're driving into McDonough, you have the kind of like quintessential like downtown square where you have the municipal buildings that surrounded the square. Like that's how the city was first laid out. And now there's a bunch of shops and restaurants all around that downtown area.
Absolutely. Just a fun fact about that, the center square that you see going through a gardening revitalization right now, that's where the original courthouse sat.
Oh, it was in the square.
It was in the square.
Okay.
And so over time it was moved back and expanded, but that is originally the founding location of that courthouse.
Wow. It looks a little bit bigger now, though.
Yeah.
It takes up the whole city block on the other side now.
Yes, absolutely.
And then so you said you were born in McDonough. Your family moved to McDonough.
Yes. In fact, I guess I was the one that came home, so to speak. My great-grandmother was from a small county just outside of Peach County in Georgia, so South Georgia. And 2 generations in Florida later, I was born and eventually came back to this amazing state. And I'm now a Georgian again.
And I believe you said you were born in Brevard County. Is that
Brevard
Belton
County.
or the?
That's that whole area. So it's the Melbourne, Titusville, Vieira Beach, Cocoa Beach, Idrimagini.
My first job in college was in Melbourne, Florida.
Oh,
And also, you know what else is north of Melbourne?
The rest of them.
Okay.
Kennedy.
Yeah, the Space Center where all the rock.
I was like, pretty much everything is north of that.
NASCAR.
Everybody knows us by two. One is in the landmark, but it's Idrimagini. And then the other is Ron John Surf Shop.
That's right, Ron John Surf Shop. I went there a lot with there. Yeah, but I mean, of course, I'm watching. Hey, there's a rocket. There's a rocket going up.
Could really see out your
Yes, yes. And if you're close enough, you could hear the rocket.
absolutely
Yes, and
feel the rap.
yeah, but of course that was a while ago. Rockets are a little bit bigger now.
We're dating ourselves.
Yes. He's
Like beat me up, Scotty. Now
yes.
So you come back to McDonough, and then you were on city council for quite a few years.
I was actually served on the council for 16 years and decided to run for mayor. And I'm here.
Did you have competition when you ran?
I did.
Was it stiff? Like how was like?
It was competition.
Yeah.
So there were actually 2 of us from the council at that time that decided to run.
I'll go ahead and.
And so it was an interesting race.
Yeah, right. And that's a tough dynamic too. Running against one of your fellow city council people, and you're friendly, but now you have a.
I think the great thing about that is that we never had any of the traditional altercations. You know, of course, the public can bring an interesting slant because there are interesting dynamics in running for government and representing a community. And the person that I ran against was actually someone who was from McDonough. And I really respect the history, everything that was here before me. And so I think it was important for people to understand that my desire was not to come in and replace, eliminate, get rid of, but to really honor the history of what was here before me. I felt a tugging as to why I made the decision. I could have continued, and that was my chair sitting back there. I could have continued to represent District 2. I felt very strongly that I had gained the trust of the community that had elected me for 16 years, so much as so that the person who ran for that seat ran unopposed. And so I could have sat there, but I really felt a tug that we had reached the point where governance had started to kind of feel fuzzy to me. It wasn't solidified in any clear direction or policies, procedures. It just started to feel like people were so far removed from the way that things should be that we were kind of starting to slip into make it up as you go. And that is not the way you govern a community. So
one of our early conversations with Mayor Lynn Deutsch, and she had a whole conversation with us, or maybe with me a few years before she met, about strategy and like a vision for what you want the city of McDonough to look like. So you had a vision, and you did not see any sort of long-term thinking when you were thinking about running.
I did not, and it was for that reason. Our wonderful Mayor Copeland had decided not to run anymore, and I just felt like it was that moment in time when we really needed to establish clear direction, not just for what was happening today, but for the future. So I did, and I hope it's okay to say this. I went into deep prayer about where we needed to go, what needed to take place, and out of that sacred space was basically 10 principles of good governance. And that is what we have used to drive and to dictate how we move as a community. We've used that in our comprehensive plan. We've used it in our policies and procedures internally. One of them is employee development. So we've been heavily focused on how do we develop our employees, because being a small town with a small group of staff, they've been minding the store.
Right.
And so technology and all of the advancements that are available weren't necessarily employed because everyone's just been grinding and doing the work. So that even led into technological advancements as being a focus. How do we do things better, differently, based on what technology has to?
I think new software that cities are update or your infrastructure, update your internet. Whatever.
All of that.
Do you manage your police, or does the county manage your?
We manage our police.
Okay, and so it's very important for police to be very connected and involved and interconnected with all state technology also. And so that I know is a whole process too.
And it's really exciting because we've been able to explore opportunities with integration with the county. We've improved our technological advancements. We're using technologies like Raven, where you can basically see where gunshots are coming from.
Right.
You know, we've done some things with flock cameras where we have really been able to identify some major criminal activity based on those technological advancements. I've also encouraged and pushed our police department into leaning into the data. It's easy to get the calls and kind of anecdotally know where the problems are, but how do we move from that into projecting where there might be issues and who needs to be involved with solving those issues? Just as a quick example, if we identify that there are a group of children that are breaking into cars, is that really the sole responsibility of law enforcement? Or should we maybe engage some of the local nonprofits and some of the local ministries to go over into these areas and mentor these kids? So community is more about community and less about policing and I gotcha.
Right. Once you're trying to do the proactive work rather than the reactive work, because police are always going to be reactive to what's ever going on. And so how do you prevent that?
And the data helps us to do that.
Right. And that's schools, that's community partners.
One of the great partnerships, and I really love this, was, sometimes things happen during, I'll say, the midnight hours that involve criminal activity. And children are often traumatized by that. So let's just say there was a domestic dispute at my house tonight, and tomorrow I have to go to school. So tomorrow I'm not really engaging in the classroom. I may be acting out. I could be doing a number of things because of what happened the night before. So we were able to forge a relationship with the school system where if something occurs, then our police department is reporting that information to the school system, to the counselors, so that they know to kind of be on guard and look out for this particular child. And I think that's great. I think that's great because oftentimes we find ourselves outside of our natural comfort zone because of something that's happened to us.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Harder jobs. So I might still.
When you talk about having a vision or a plan, and it's kind of, if things are steady state, plans are a whole lot easier. But McDonough's gone on the population curve, it's like through the roof, right? If there were roughly 8,000 people in 2020, and now there's 33,000 people, 23 years later, right? 25 years later, it's like, it's some pretty significant growth that's happened. And try to manage that, have a plan around all that isn't easy.
We have had a huge population explosion, and that's why you have to have a plan, because the plan helps you to do almost mechanically what is required to do, so that by having a plan, when the emergencies happen, you're able to pivot. But if you don't have a plan, then everything becomes an emergency. So I feel really good about it, and kind of look at the inverse of what you just said, because we don't succeed without a plan. So it's mandatory. The plan is the foundation, and then everything else that happens, again, you're able to adjust to it simply because you're following.
How do you kind of you go with that much population growth, even just everyday basic services like the police, like trash, like fire, like any of this stuff? It's like, hey, do we need twice as many people next year? And it's probably not like linear. It's probably like, maybe you need a little more than that.
And it's difficult. That's the difficult part. That's why technology is so important. We are growing internally right now. We've had a 15% increase in staff. That is difficult because keep in mind that when you hire more people, typically that's asking for more tax dollars. So we've tried to be very sensitive to where we are economically, and also the importance of maintaining fiscal responsibility, which is one of those goals. Yes. And so we have been able to maintain a 3.033 millage rate. When we saw that we were going to have to increase with our fire and police just from a service standpoint, it was important that we let the public know we're not just going to increase taxes because as a citizen, you don't know how that money is being used. But if we set up a special service district and we designate that money specifically to law enforcement and fire, it can't be used for a building. It can't be used for furnishings. It can only be used for personnel. Then as a citizen, you're able to look at what's being collected and know that that's going into service delivery. That's a whole lot easier to receive than, oh, we're just going to increase salary because we want to buy a new police car. No, it doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't work that way here.
Yeah, when we were kind of first talking, we're mentioning, we're coming from the real estate side of how does all this stuff get pieced together. And if you own a piece of real estate, for the most part, you definitely want police, fire, or else you can't even get insurance. You can't, if the response times aren't there, you can't even do anything with that piece of land. So it adds a lot of value to real estate when you have these services that are there for it. We're looking just in McDonough in general, in the sheer number of new developments that are happening here, and a lot of residential. That's all coming here, hence the population growth. But that's a lot of infrastructure that has to then be added, even from roads and sewer and all that stuff. Are you working with your city planners to map all that stuff out?
We are trying, and it's happening so rapidly. It's in full transparency, I still feel like we're behind the curve on the growth as it relates to catching up. Fortunately, we have a great relationship with the county in moving towards joint partnerships where our roads and transportation are concerned. The public doesn't know where the city starts and stops. It's just not a conscious thing that people think about. So we've been working with the county on the roads and a lot of other infrastructure. But there are things that we are looking at as well, like connectivity and sidewalks, and how do we make sure that people with mobility issues are able to get where they need to go in designing accordingly. So we've done a lot of that. But I do want to talk a little bit about this population growth. I think I need to start a show called Everybody Loves McDonough. Because it feels like the world is converging on McDonough, but we have a lot of evangelists out there, and this is what I mean by that. So I hear almost daily people who are talking about, well, I came to visit McDonough, loved it, and told my family. So you have this great migration that's coming in from up north, and of course, family wants to be together. So a lot of people are seeking to live here, but there's also this nebulous thing out there about living in McDonough when people really don't. There's a McDonough across the interstate that's actually unincorporated Henry County, but they have a McDonough zip code. So I get calls every day from people, I live in McDonough. No, you're not technically in it, but I promise to help get you to where you need to go. So being a small town, one of the things that I'm saying a small town, and I do realize that that's an oxymoron.
Right.
The horse is out the barn, there's no going back, but there's some things that we're trying to do to maintain that small town charm. When we developed our comprehensive plan, everybody said, I love the city because of the small town feel. So how do we employ Disney magic in doing that? We started to do things like put in crossbuck fencing. As you were coming in, I don't know if you noticed on Jonesboro Road, but there was some old land that GDOT had that we asked for possession of. They gave it to us, so we enclosed it in crossbuck fencing and put 3 bronze horses.
Yeah, and that was right at the turning. And when you're coming down the highway, and you coming in McDonough, you see the big space there.
Come in, and the people who were here before, the older people, that's reminiscent of what they saw every day. We partnered with Leadership Hembry on something called Keep Hembry Rocking, where we were asking people to purchase rocking chairs and sit them outside, because nothing says Southern more than sitting on the porch rocking.
Sure.
And so we did a lot of that. And of course, we make a significant investment in our downtown district. We recommend, we respect that as being our beachfront, but we also know that there are other economic hubs as well, which you would be interested in, like the South Point area. That has just exploded into a phenomenal area to shop, to live, to work, to play. And we recognize that as one of the major economic drivers. So our focus on small town feel isn't as great at South Point as it is in our downtown area.
And I should have looked this up before, but one of my other assumptions is that living here is going to be much, much more affordable than living in like South Atlanta. So one of your draws, there is that whole affordable housing conversation, that housing here is going to be a lot less than, say, part of the city. And so is that one of your drivers right now?
That is a driver. That is a driver, and that's why another reason why people want to live here is because of the affordability, and to live more specifically in the city because of our tax base. Where do you go where your taxes are at 3.03 mil? So, yeah, there are a lot of reasons why people come to McDonough, and I really love the fact that we have such a great sense of community here with activities. I don't think there's a weekend that goes by that we're not doing something. It's either the Geranium Festival or we're getting ready for an international gospel festival. We've had the Caribbean Festival. We have Tunnels to Towers race that celebrates the work and heroism of the people from 9/11. So just community, that's who we are. And that's who we are at our core.
We when we were driving into McDonough, we talked a little bit too, like there's a lot of development that's actually McDonough, and there's a lot of development that's like not in McDonough, but they're all coming to all of the infrastructure, all the stuff that you're maintaining. So you think about, the 33,000 people, or the other people that are actually just coming in too to shop, eat, or come to any of the activity that you all are putting on here in the town.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to call this an indicator. We, during our first State of the City event, took place almost a month ago now, and our theme was McDonough, the New Standard. And we see ourselves as being standard setters because one of the indicators of being a standard setter is duplication. Mm-hmm. So we see a lot of duplication. Even in the county, we see crossbuck fencing that's on Jonesboro Road. And oops, now people are going to think that this is the city of McDonough, but it's not. But it looks great. It's charming. I love that visual that I see on Jonesboro Road. But then there are other things that are a little bit more subtle, like we decided 2 years ago that we didn't like chain link fencing around detention ponds. It just looks horrible when you're driving by and there's this huge black chain link fence. So we moved away from that. We moved into having aluminum cast wrought iron style fencing around the detention ponds, and wherever we can put crossbuck fencing, we'll do that. But the primary goal for some of those areas is safety. So now we see in other parts of the county that is starting to be practiced.
This looks good. We'll just copy that one.
They know what they're doing. Let's just do the same thing.
So the other thing too is for our 200th anniversary, we wanted to do something that was really fun. I mean, because that's what really galvanizes community and makes people feel like they're part of something, a family. So we did something called the Hot Chocolate Social, Tinseltown, Christmas Town. We have this amazing 100-plus acre park that we had curated this huge train that said, Happy 200th Anniversary. So we celebrated our birthday. And the whole makeup of the space were not Christmas items. They were Christmas items. It was during December. The city's birthday is December 17th. But we were specific about the use of those Christmas elements. So we had about 5, like the gingerbread people that represented the families that were here long ago. So you scan a QR code, and then I give the history of the families in
You read the history?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So in the backdrop were all these blue twinkling lights that was symbolic of our historic Camp Creek train wreck. And then we had the drummers, the toy soldiers who represented the Revolutionary War. So we talked a little bit about that. The train represented the train history. So it was really a walk through history, but done with Christmas light. It really caught on. So the next year we did it again, but this year touting it as a Christmas event and we probably had more than 5,000 people that were in attendance throughout the course
That's pretty good.
of time. So we don't know what we're doing.
And how many gallons of hot chocolate?
No.
Like, is this like 100 gallons or like 10,000 gallons?
Well, we contract with the local business, Tom's Hot Chocolate.
Okay.
And so they bring the hot chocolate, and of course we pay for it, so it's free. And I don't know how many gallons, but that first year we served over 200 people for that one-day event. But then last year we went way over that. We ended up having 2 trucks.
2 trucks of hot chocolate.
Yes.
It's a lot of hot chocolate.
It's like a milk truck right inside something.
Imagine how many bags of marshmallows you go.
I'm trying to think of how do you heat up all that milk? How do you use to stir it all?
They're the experts, but it was really great. And there's this character that I have that's a tribute to my great-grandmother, my great-grandfather, and my mother. She's a composite, and she's called Mama Christmas. So we partnered with a local nonprofit whose goal is to give out toys during Christmas time. So we brought them into the park, and we ended up serving over 200 families, giving them the space to come in and have the kids pick out what they wanted. So we didn't just hand them over a package. They got to take a picture with Mama Christmas. They got to take a picture with Santa and Mrs. Claus.
And did you get to be Mama Christmas?
I was Mama
It's Mama Christmas. If we need a picture of
Mama Christmas. Oh my!
As a mayor, you're front and center, right up there. You're not like hidden behind. You're not in some office. Like it's like you're out in the community every day.
The sad thing is, she doesn't get to go.
Mama Christmas doesn't get to go. What's up?
Mayor Vincent doesn't get to go to the Christmas event, so Mama Christmas is always making up these excuses. I remember, I'll tell the story, then we can move on, but we were at a Christmas tree lighting ceremony that we do on the square, and a lady came up to me and she was talking. We were, as mayor, we were having she came up and she talked to me as Mama Christmas.
Right.
So we were having this great conversation. I said, well, make sure you talk to Mayor Vincent about that. When can I find
You won't find her today, but maybe tomorrow.
Yeah. I think she's on vacation right now. She might not be in town.
But what was funny is that she actually knew Mayor Vincent, so I couldn't understand why.
So you have a pretty good outfit on there.
I don't think there's much of a difference, but it was just really to see that unfold. That just means, and I've seen this. I have such deep honor and respect and admiration for grandparents and great grandparents and the significance that they play in the community as a whole, in the village. We've seen somewhat of a migration, because I think back in my mind at people that were 50, 60, 70 years old, and the 50, 60, 70-year-olds of today are very different from those women. They're Gigi's and Lala's and all of these other different people. But back then, those women were the ones who made the magic. And so even when I'm talking to adults in that role, I don't take their role lightly, because I've had people cry. I've had them share painful stories with me in that moment. So I understand the importance. And to me, being Mama Christmas is more than a tribute to my people. It's also a tribute to all of the many people who have gone away that made magic, and that's exactly what they did. You couldn't fall without it being healed, because your granny said, baby, you'll be all right.
And you wrote a book about this.
So people are telling me to write a book about this. I've written a lot of awards on other people's books.
Right.
Encourage them to do this. I keep hearing, you need to write, because I do. I think words are powerful. They're healing. It's just, I don't know when I'm going to have the time.
It sounds like a great story, though.
Thank you.
Yeah, doing that as mayor, most of the time the mayor doesn't seem like it's like a part-time, couple hours a week type gig.
Yeah, I'm also hearing like multiple books that it's a great shoulderless book. Yeah, it's also a great adult history book too. So it could be either one.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have another job outside of being the mayor, or are you doing it full time?
Full.
Both. Yeah.
I do. I am involved in other ventures. I help a lot of people in ministry. I work with a lot of people in the community, and of course, I work in other areas as well. But for the most part, at any time, you can get me as mayor of McDonough.
Yeah.
Well, then you're a recent grandmother too, so congratulations on that. And that's, I mean, that's
Recent is 4 years. Gosh,
it's so recent, yeah.
and
Amazing.
and Cairo is absolutely, when they say grandparent perfection, yeah.
Yes.
He is.
Well, he's the first grandchild. He's also the best grandchild.
He's the best grandfather.
Okay. Until there's a second. And then
The first one's still, you.
You're first, right?
Yeah.
First, I hear it. Yes.
the oldest child. Yeah, yeah.
Look at other firsts over here.
Yeah.
We're all oh my God, we're all first.
Yes.
I never thought we.
Yeah, so Cairo, he's gonna be awesome. He's gonna be the cast. We're good.
Great guess.
I'm the first as well.
Sam, there you go.
So my only advice I want to give you is just make sure you tell him you're my favorite grandchild every time you see him until there's a second. Then you have to see him.
That is the favorite first grade child.
You're my favorite first grandchild.
No, that right.
Yeah. I told my daughter she's my favorite daughter. I only have one daughter.
Yeah, that's true. But at 4, eventually they'll, Grandma, you won't. There's only one of me.
So I have this story, okay, about Cairo. It's just kind of a cute thing. He was a pandemic baby.
Oh.
You know where we were.
That's right. 2020. That's right. That's
So if you can imagine me being in the space where I'm with people everywhere all the time and being chronically afraid to come in with something that might be transferred to him, it was a very scary space. So I came up with this thing where when I saw him, I would grab his little foot and I'd say, "Look at Granny's feet. Look at Granny's feet," and I'd make him laugh. Look at as an infant. So as he grew up and he learned to talk, guess what happened? I became Granny Feet.
That was
Because that's it.
and it's it.
And it stopped.
Oh, you're still Granny Feet. That's fantastic.
Yeah, Granny
Own it.
Feet. So if something happens, he's calling Granny Feet and telling Granny Feet what's up.
That's
And I love it. I will not change.
Yeah, that's very good.
that's original.
Yes, yes.
None of the other grandmothers
No,
mixed up.
not Granny.
No, I don't think there's ever
Yeah.
been a granny in history.
Yeah, yeah.
It's granny.
Exactly.
Well, when we were kind of looking through, when you were talking about running for mayor, one of the things we talked about too was like you didn't want to just pick like one. Hey, I'm going to run on this statement, and you kind of picked this general theme of like, hey, we need to just really do everything better. We need to have processes, and we need to. You mentioned before, like have a plan. How? So you're 2 years in.
Wow, this is actually
Going to
4.
Oh,
And just to be clear, you're going to get Dave very excited right now because Dave loves process.
Okay.
yes. It's like sometimes there's like people problems, sometimes there's process problems. I would get all the process ones better than makes it easier for all the people that.
And I can so identify with that because even visually, if you can depict the system visually, you can look at it and tell what the bottlenecks are. So I believe in process flow. I believe in continuous improvement. I believe in having a baseline plan so that your plan do check at, and you're constantly checking in to see if this works. If it doesn't work, let's just kind of redo it and refine it. I think that's a part of what nature does, so that's a pretty good model, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, Josh and I joke like he used to have 4 kids. I have 3 kids. But when you went from like 1 kid to 2 kids and 3 kids, like your whole plan got to change, and you've gone from 8,000 to 33,000. What do you think kind of the hurdles are going forwards?
Oh,
And what processes like, man, these ones they'll work on these.
well, we're wow, that's a loaded question because it's not just the community, but it's internally as well. And some of the great thought leaders of organizational leadership and development often talk about this period of change when you're creating a different culture that's called chaos. And so it's that period where you're converging old with new, and the new isn't necessarily solidified. So people try to go back to the familiar, and that is a process within itself. And I believe that that is where we are right now as a city. We've had to hire new people that are from other organizations that are coming in with their fortified philosophies about how things interact. But at the same time, we're trying to establish the McDonough way. And that way is very much family oriented. It's people first, where you care about individuals. You foster a feeling where people they like to work for the city. That's not just because of money, but they genuinely enjoy the experience, and just making sure that we're all on the same page about bringing your A game to work every day, working hard, because the people out in the communities depend on us to make magic.
But that's a process in itself. Like, how do you convey that message to more and more people as citizens moving in? And
it's continuous work. We recently, it's almost a year now, that we hired a deputy city administrator. So in addition to our city administrator, we have a deputy administrator, and that person has the responsibility of helping to fortify this feeling of connectivity, to make sure that we're bringing our employees to a higher level of delivery. There was a time when I would sit there and we'd have our council members come in and people would just kind of make presentations. But if you're watching us virtually, then you have no idea what we're talking about.
Because you're only seeing what the actual presentation is.
So everybody who's presenting needs to present from a PowerPoint, so the public knows exactly what we're talking about. That's a part of the transparency and getting people comfortable with presenting. So there's a lot of internal employee development that is taking place. Now, I want to be very intentional and clear about this point. There were people here who carried the burden before the newbies got here. I believe in making sure that those people who are employees have the tools that they need to level up. It was never for me about coming in and getting rid of employees, because I didn't want to get rid of anybody, even though I know that that's kind of a standard in government. But we've been able to work with our employees to help them with their skill set. We're not already there, but we're working on it. We've been working on our branding and trying to have more templates. So you don't have to figure out how to navigate through PowerPoint and other things. It's already done for you. We've also brought on a public relations team that I'm proud of, because it's not just having an employee here. We contract with several organizations within the community who have their own base, because part of our goal is to reach all of McDonough and not just the group that follows us, on social media. It's young in demographic. It's old in how the information is written and put out. So we try to reach different groups and make sure that we're staying on the cutting edge of communication.
And you're pretty active on Facebook.
Yes.
Your main. So it sounds like you're out in the community at every event. Facebook is right there, but then also on Facebook, talking to residents on a daily basis.
This is interesting. It's something I'm working on right now. We are redoing our square, as you saw. That's been an amazing process. We have Carmen Johnston of Bespoke Garden. You may have heard of her. She's really famous. But she did a design called the Bespoke Garden Plan, and our Main Street board was responsible for curating that, working with her, getting a plan together, getting the council to review and approve the plan. So it's really a major undertaking. But one of the things that we did not count on or even see coming was the fact that you have a fortified landmark within your city. So you have some people who are saying, why are you bothering the square? What are you doing? You're wasting money. When I was a kid, this was the situation. It was beautiful. We don't understand. Where is our statue? Because we were a part of the cities that actually removed the Confederate monument from the square. The square I mentioned to you earlier, that space was the site of the original courthouse. So we technically don't own the land, but we lease the land from the county. So the county removed the Confederate soldiers, a monument, from the square, which almost tore us apart as a community. And now some of those feelings are coming back because we've never really addressed the trauma from that experience. And I intentionally use the word trauma because I'm a big researcher too. When things happen, I want to understand the science behind it. So one of the things that I've found is the conversation that's taking place right now is probably tied to this point. And I'll give you another story to kind of explain this. But when I was a kid, our house was like the biggest house on the planet. I mean, we had everything. Our food was the best food. The smells were amazing. This was just a magical place in which to live. Well, when I became an adult and I was away for a while and I went home, what I envisioned as a mansion was really like this cute little bungalow house. And I'm like, how can there be so much of a difference between what I perceive now and what I perceived then? So what that makes me understand about the human experience is that our memories are tied to emotion. So while you might feel one way because of a particular monument, somebody else could feel very differently. And when you think about the fact that in McDonough, the square was the gathering space. So I would have come with my great-grandmother, my mother, my father. I would have come with my great-grandfather. We would have had picnics on the square. We would have come after church and gathered and talked to people. So you would have all these feelings of love. We weren't that focused on the trees or the flowers. It was the feeling of what that brought to my life as a person growing up in McDonough. So a part of the conversation that's unfolding right now is really a disconnect between the emotional attachment and the change that's taking place. So I feel like part of my responsibility as mayor in trying to foster a sense of unity is to, first of all, create this awareness that this is really a situation that involves the emotions and how the brain actually creates these feelings of fondness, and to let everybody know that as we move forward, we're trying to plant this beautiful garden. We're trying to do amazing landscaping. We're trying to improve this as a gathering space. That there is a part of us that will be remorseful because we're seeing change to something that we thought was absolutely perfect.
That's an excellent way of telling that story and relating that to how you associate with one place and as it changes over time. But
a lot of people have a connection to the experience of going there, having a picnic, and whatever's there is just there, and it's included in the experience. And when you're changing that experience, that's emotional.
That's emotion.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
And I think when people understand that, then they're better able to navigate the experience and the emotion, because now I understand why I have all this anxiety about what's taking place. It's going to be beautiful when it's there. Why am I feeling like I'm feeling right now?
And probably the population that grew up around that square is actually very small now compared to what the population is in McDonough right now, because those were thousands of people, and now you're up to about 35,000 people in our city, and so it's a very different city than it was 20 years ago.
And I want to lift that up a little bit because it continues to be important to me, and I think others need to consider this as well. Well, what you just said about 1,000 people versus 33,000, I could look at it that way and say this 1,000 doesn't matter. We got 33,000 people coming from all over. None of what you say is important. We got all these people. The votes are there. I can get reelected because all of these people are from here. But the way that I envision this is like you would a blended family. And I don't know if any of you have experienced a blended family, but when you bring in different groups of individuals, sometimes you have to take extra effort to make sure that the individuals who have been there feel important and valued as they are, and they I'm sorry as they are, and the way that we move forward with how they are in. And I want to be very intentional about this, and I'm almost emotional in talking about it, because sometimes communities, as they grow, people go in and they just take over. And they don't take into account the history of what was there before then. And so you end up with these communities that grow in very erratic ways, and people who were there, this has been their home their whole life, or are left feeling as though they're not valued, they're not important, they're not included in the process. So that 1,000 is important to how we move forward, and we need to always keep them on the forefront of our minds, because this is home.
I mean, I think what you just described to me is very human. It's very kind. It's actually what we should be doing more of right now, being inclusive. And, you know, if you have somebody moving from everywhere now here, but there's 200 years of history here.
Right.
And McDonough is here almost because those original crew created an amazing place for people to live. And that has to be respected and understood too.
Absolutely.
And so really happy to hear you say that.
You know, when this is maybe 3 budget books ago, and we were trying to make sure that our technology allowed us to send budget books out. For transparency, one of those 10 points, send those out via text messages. So when we designed that book, it was important to even go back to the Creek Indians, because the Creek Indians were the original settlers of this area. And while we don't have a Creek population right now, I think there's a spiritual thing associated with having been here, and that we need to acknowledge that people lived, that they contributed, that they died, that they were a part of all of this amazing stuff that we get to enjoy as being the new kid on the block.
Right.
So you definitely feel like you're a steward of what's happened in the past and bringing that forward.
It's a very powerful word, and that is precisely, you reached in and pulled that out. I don't know if I would.
You're embracing the history, and you're taking it in as in this is part of us. Yes. And even though we're new here, it is part of us, and we're going to keep it.
We are honoring our historic past as we move towards a vibrant future, and that is the vision of McDonough.
I love that. And before I forget, I have to say happy belated International Women's Day too.
Thank you.
And you're also a leader in a couple other things too, from what I remember too. You're the first woman mayor of McDonough, and you're also the first African-American mayor of McDonough. So well done.
Thank you. With it, and very much. Thank you.
All right. Well, we very much enjoyed talking to you. It's amazing hearing the history of McDonough and what you're doing to kind of really just keep it alive. I love the Mama Christmas component. I think it's hilarious. This one was like, wait, we weren't sure. Where's the mayor?
Do we get a picture of?
Oh,
I think it's probably only a in person. It's one of the live plays. It's only in person.
There you go, see it.
Yeah.
we'll have to make that happen.
I think there's a video, like little teaser on this, but Model Christmas there.
I hope you guys go to our amazing square. We've got some absolutely phenomenal eateries there. I think even though the construction is going on right now, that you won't be disappointed. So please enjoy our hospitality. We're trying to figure out how to become the hospitality hub of the South. Because once you come to McDonough, you don't want to go back anywhere else.
I love your take on the Disney part of it. Is something, Joshua, we did a exercise that's like Disney maps, right? So the whole point was like, how do you visualize on a piece of paper? Like, what does your Disney map of the future look like? What are all the little pieces you need? So Walt Disney famously made this map in the 50s of like, this everything I'm going to build out for Disney.
Wow.
And then, it took him some time, but he eventually built.
And I think the Disney map is in her head someplace. It's there.
And the whole key to that is the attention to detail. Disney, the way they cast the light from a lamp, you're not consciously thinking about this occurring, but you always know what is happening in the storyline because they've taken the time to identify and connect with you emotionally. So every little piece counts.
Yeah. That's it. Cool. All right, well, thank you, Mayor Vincent.
Thank you, man. I just said this.
It's loves you guys. It's been awesome. It's been painless. So.
You're okay? You're good?
Great.
Ours actually good ice cream. That's what we're headed next.
Yeah, Scoops is on the
Yep.
square. Go tell them I sent you.
I'm going to get a discount if we...
I don't know about that. But they are wonderful. You won't be disappointed.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
joining us. Okay.